I don't know what to say other than wow. What an introduction. My father would have been proud of it. My mother would have believed it. What I would like to do here, actually, is to share with you some observation about marketing, and primarily to try to move us to reimagine a little different marketing than the one that we know today. But before we do it, what I really would like to do is to thank, first of all, the voters and the judges, to the organizer of this event that actually wanted us to focus today on the future of marketing. And I think if you think about the environment we face in terms of kind of diverse force of change, the enormous advances in technology and science, if you think about what's happening in the media area, if you think what's happening in terms of the empowered and skeptical consumers, if you think about the general environment we're dealing with, if you think about the new business and revenue models that we have to start to address, to develop, to try to address these uncertainties, enormous threats, but also unbelievable opportunities. And I fully agree with Gary. There has never been a better time in terms of being a marketer. But at the same time, there are huge issues here. And given this, I think it's really commendable that the organizer of the event really decided not only to give us an award and say a nice thank you, but to force us to think about what do we view the future of marketing to be, to share it with you, and hopefully have some influence and impact. And what I hope to be able to achieve here tonight, I'm going to share with you basically 10 observations or ideas or suggestions how to reimagine marketing, how it can be differently. And I know that 10 is a lot and probably would have been more smarter to come with 3 so you can remember them. But the idea is to suggest areas that really require change and encourage each of us to say, of these portfolio of 10 ideas, can I pick one and start doing a little experiments and start moving the needle and start having an impact in this area? And I really kind of would like to thank, and congratulate my 3 other inductees, Jim, John, and Gary. It's a real honor to be with you. You've been doing spectacular, spectacular work. And I really love the fact that they allow us to be together, the academia and business. I think that's really what we would like to do. So my premise primarily is that despite all the problems that we face today, and there are tons of problems, we have the potential as marketers to make a difference. We have the right orientation. Remember Peter Drucker, the essence of business is marketing and innovation. We can really do it. It might not be the marketing functions, the marketing departments as we know them today, but if we go back to the marketing philosophy, to the idea of a marketing orientation that drives the business, we can actually make it. We can make the change. And my objective is primarily to suggest 10 ideas that if we implement them, I'll be able to come up with better world for all of us. And one of the kind of point that Don made in his wonderful introduction was actually what we have been working, Catherine Hayes, who's working with me on the future of advertising, and Andrew Essex from the Tribeca Film Festival and I have been working on, is trying to come up with a new award, which we call it the Triple Win Award, for brands that create values for brands, consumers, and society, all 3. Very consistent with philosophy to what Jim's work has been with Grow and some of the others. So primarily what I would like us to think about, let's start thinking about kind of a new world. What will be if marketing will try to reimagine itself, and primarily I view it as necessary to start with challenging the mallamals of industry, challenging the mallamals of academia. As a result of this interface, to try to address 9 key challenges, and then for all of us together to try to challenge our current society's attitudes and values, which are fundamental, and if we will not address them, I don't think we'll be able to achieve what we're trying to do with the others. So let's start. The first one is the idea will be to start to reimagine the consumer. Not to think about the consumer in the narrow context of a target consumer out there, but as a person. And actually the comment in terms of employees that we heard before from the other kind of inductees here is very consistent with this. You know, we cannot focus only on the traditional role of consumers. Let's look at the total person in the context of the total behavior. And let's also keep in mind that we tend to be siloed in industries. Consumers don't have these industry silos. They expect the same thing they get from Federal Express to know exactly where their package is at any point of time from anyone else. So the expectations are across all the silos. So let's start kind of reimagine a much broader kind of consumer. And that's basically the skeptical and empowered consumer that's going to determine basically at the end what's going to happen. Second, and that's a critical area for us, and that's especially kind of, I think, more so even a challenge for academia than for industry. The academic world of marketing today is split into three areas, three silos: marketing science, consumer behavior, and marketing strategy. It's absurd. It's absurd that our PhD students that we teach them are basically within a silo and they don't understand the interplay among them. Unless we'll be able to break those silos and bridge them, and it does not mean that we don't need the in-depth knowledge, but how do we take the in-depth knowledge in each one of these areas, link them together around primarily real-world problems? We will not get the advance that we need. And I think you in industry here, majority here are in industry, can actually influence this by the kind of the problems you will give to MSI and other places, the type of challenges and type of work you'll do with academia. Because this narrow siloed perspective in a given area with no regard to what the real world problem and challenges are is not going to move us forward. The third area is a huge challenge in terms of how do we bridge primarily the different disciplines that affect what marketing does, what a business does. And today we have basically the kind of all of the different business functions, but the reality is when we're coming up with the final solution for any business, any organization, we have to integrate all of them. It's the integration between marketing and IT and operations. You cannot contribute, you cannot look at the ROI of marketing by itself without understanding the contribution of the others. And unfortunately, a lot of the attribution models that we have today are doing pretty superficial job. And the only way to try to address it effectively would be to start designing really creative experiments that are basically looking at combination of these and trying to see which of them is working and try to assess the value. And we cannot limit this only to the traditional business function. We have also to expand our horizon to other disciplines. And primarily, whether it is cognitive computing, whether it's machine learning, design thinking, neuroscience, gaming, and others, we have to bring them all together. And what Don was mentioning before in terms of the new initiative we have on the Wharton Disruptors, the idea is to bring to marketing as a visiting guest at least once a year for a week, if we can, a senior researcher from ideally one of the research labs, whether it will be IBM lab or Google lab or Facebook lab or any of the others, to spend time with us on new disciplines that we don't have represented among our faculty. Because we have to start educating the faculty and the future generation of PhDs to the other disciplines and their interface with what marketing is. The fourth area is primarily relating to and directly comes from the work we've been doing with the future of advertising, where we ask over 200 thought leaders around the world, and many of you participated in this, two simple questions. What could or should advertising be by 2020? What should we do today to try to get there? Overwhelmingly, one of the key findings of this was that we have to make sure that we can reach consumers through all touch points. It is not the media mix. It's through all touch points. Because product design, package design, the call center interaction are as important as traditional media. And when we start talking about all touch points, let's make sure we include the human and non-human, all level of personalization, all level of automation, the real-time measures and decision, and on demand. So to start thinking about how do we deal effectively with all these touch points and moving beyond the traditional narrow focus on primarily media mix. The fifth area is critical, and it's kind of a foundation of what we discussed. How do we bridge basically academia and industry? The separation really does not make sense. That's what we'd like to start basically encouraging more. So MSI has been around for, about over 50 years, 60 years. I really welcome that finally this year, for the first time, they have a request for proposals in digital marketing that insist that the submitter of the proposal will be a combination of both industry and academia. Finally, we're getting there. I think if everyone will start thinking about this in a more serious way of the joint collaboration between the two will make huge progress. The sixth area that I would like us to think about is basically the triple win. How do we assure that not only we maximize the long-term shareholder value and meeting the needs of consumers, and especially the evolving needs of consumers around the world, but how do we also achieve at the same time the needs of society? And that's the triple win that we talked about before. And this will require new measures. It will require primarily kind of a fundamental change in values that I think my three kind of former speakers here really kind of address the issue of values. How do we kind of avoid the greed and unethical behavior that we see today? And primarily, hopefully, that many of you here will decide to submit your application to the new award that we're creating to try to celebrate the triple win. The seventh area is really the idea of how do we move away from the traditional kind of targeting, and especially of programmatic targeting, which does not really take into account the total person, to really understanding the consumer as a partner, as a co-creator. There is a lot of data, a lot of evidence today to show that you're getting by far better results in terms of new product, new service development, new experiences, if the consumer is your co-creator, as opposed to you sitting by yourself and developing something and try to market it. Let's rethink it. How do we create platforms to engage consumers in everything we do, as opposed to kind of basically we develop it, we are the kind of the R&D geniuses developing the solution and then trying to throw it at the consumer. So how do we create it? The co-creation and recognizing basically the empowered consumer, the total consumer, the person we talked before, and understanding the changing consumer journey and the heterogeneity among consumers. The eighth area is, and my apology for the graph here, what happened is between Philadelphia and New York, some of my build-up were lost. So let me kind of walk you through it. So the idea here is of rethinking basically what is integrated approach to marketing that allow decision makers to make the right decision at the right time with the right tool, with the right information in real time. So the idea will be to start with what are the insights we have from our research. I thought there is a pointer. And ideally, not only to look at individual research, but try to look more in terms of some of the work we've done over the years in terms of empirical generalizations. What can we learn across the whole set of research we have done? Meta-analysis and other approaches to try truly to learn from all the research available in a given area. And incidentally, with technology such as Wharton, this is now much more feasible than before. Once we take it, how do we translate this into compelling and creative decision and stories, back to the storytelling, the importance of storytelling that people would like to share with others. And then we take the results here, and ideally in kind of what we're suggesting here in terms of story is, again, one of the major findings we have from the Future of Advertising project, suggesting to follow the RAVES criteria, suggesting that any message or offering should be respectful and relevant for the consumer, actionable, valuable, both emotionally and cognitively, experiential, and that the consumer wants to share with others, a shareable story. And then how do you take it and include this basically as part of a series of adaptive experimentation? And the heart of the approach is to start to experiment. And then once we have it, let's make sure when we take the results and integrate this with the results of any cognitive computing or AI that we'll work with. And the idea the AI not to replace the individual, but actually to augment their decision ability and utilizing the new technology of VR, especially augmented reality, to try to lead to primarily better decision as part of a decision support system in real time. This is feasible. Parts of this are being done today. Let's integrate it. And if you look at these 8, a necessary condition for success here will be my Reimagine 9, which is the ability to attract the right talent. Unfortunately, marketing does not have the reputation in many places of the exciting, intellectually exciting, and we change the world position. I think that with some of the kind of the opportunity today in predictive analytics and in neuroscience, there is some hope that we're getting and attracting them. In advertising, they've been successful in attracting the creative people. But in general, if you look at some of the younger people, we are not getting always absolutely the superstars. How do we attract them? How do we attract them from all the disciplines? And that's critical. Critical to start adapting and getting the talent that we need for the field from all disciplines, not only among business school graduates. Let's look for many, many other areas and try to identify and entice them through the work we do to try to come to marketing. Imagine now that we are kind of basically all these 9 kind of factors are integrated. They're all interrelated. What will be the nature of marketing? It will be dramatically different than marketing as we know it today. But the good news is we can do it. We have the talent. We have an enormous amount of talent. And not only talented people, we have passionate people. So we have the talent and the passion, and we have the technology that allows us to try to do it. But we have to move beyond what we're doing today and start experimenting with some of these extensions, if you want to the current state of marketing. But even if we do it, this is not enough. I think we have to address the threats to our fundamental values as a society. And here I'm really kind of going a little beyond what you typically expect from academic presentation or discussion, and hope that we in marketing will be able to take a much more lead role in addressing some of these issues. These are serious issues. When you talk about the freedom of the press, independence of the judiciary, equality, you think about the attitude towards science. You know, we cannot be quiet. We cannot just sit there and continue doing what we're doing. Thank you. Thank you. That's really encouraging. So I really hope that we'll be able to follow the example of what New York Times Magazine had the cover story a few weeks ago in terms of the resistance, and we'll be able to move forward with primarily in defending our fundamental values as a society, because that's critical. And who is better than the marketing leadership in doing it? We can communicate. We can communicate effectively. We can try to influence and change a fundamental attitude and values that are being threatened today. So my hope is that we'll be able to at least start experimenting with these 10 areas. And if we do it, I think it will lead to a more impactful and respectful discipline that we will be proud of. I still remember years ago there was an article of, will you let your daughter marry a marketing man? Well, I hope that it will do, at least move toward it. Everyone will be proud to marry their daughter or son to a marketing man. Thank you so much.